Hello, students. I hope you are all doing well. So, we're going to start our September session 4 polity discussion. So, in the polity, many of the static things are there, as we have seen throughout the polity discussions, that majority of the things that we are discussing are static in nature. Last discussion, we had discussed a few legislations in news, right? And today we'll have some general discussions. Okay, let's start. So first is NCST, that is National Commission for Scheduled Tribe, recommends the tribal area for the Ladakh. So Ladakh area, after the Union Territory of Ladakh has been formed, after the reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir state into Union Territories, so it has been declared, it has recommended that it should be declared as a tribal area under the 6th schedule of the Constitution. Okay, and that is how your 5th and 6th schedule from the Lakshmikant or whatever book you read becomes relevant. Okay, so 6th schedule is for the administration of the tribal area after getting the in which the autonomous district and regional council are set up. So it is basically providing autonomy to the tribal areas. Okay, which is the central authority which declares a tribal area. This is important, the Home Ministry. So Home Ministry is the central authority that declares a tribal area. Okay, so that is the fact. Now, many of the things on the static front you have to do on your own. Which are the district for the 6th schedule? So these are AMTM. For now, AMTM are there. That is Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Right? You can remember like that. Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Okay. So if you have to remember, these are the 4 states in which the 6th schedule is applicable. Right? That is the first thing. Secondly, we have to read about the constitutional body, that is NCST. I have not covered it here because it is very easy to cover and you can cover it from your static sources, right? Very easy. So finally, in its current form, it is formed after the 89th amendment that happened in 2003, that got it separated from the NCSC. That is National Commission for the Scheduled Tribe. So it is 338, Article 338 is for National Commission for Scheduled Caste. 338A is for National Commission for Scheduled Tribe, and 338B is for NCBC, that is National Commission for Backward Classes, that has got the constitutional recognition last year. Okay. Next is you have to do, I'm not discussing here. So what is the difference between 5th schedule and the 6th schedule? Very important for our examination, because this the differences can come and very specific differences are there. Okay. So in the 5th schedule, all the states, the scheduled areas are there except Mizoram, Meghalaya, AMTM, Assam, and in the 6th schedule AMTM is there. Right, few of the powers are different. That small thing you have to keep in mind. So please revise from your static source 5th and 6th schedule and the difference between them. There is a small chapter is there. Next, we are going to discuss Competition Commission of India. So it's a statutory body established under the Competition Act 2002. Now, from the name itself, it is very easy to decipher what is the functions of this, right? So Competition Commission of India, to ensure the competition, there is a fair play, fair equal level provided to all the business ventures. So there should not be any market practice that distort the competition sphere, right? Because the idea of the market capitalism runs on the idea of the competition, right? So if you see the functions, to eliminate the practices which are adverse to the competition, yes, and to sustain the competition, all these things. Okay, and that is how it imposes the penalties on the certain industries, certain groups, and after that they can appeal to the higher authorities. But that is currently we are discussing the Competition Commission of India. Okay, so what is the legacy of Competition Commission of India? Actually, this year economic survey, in its chapter Undermining Market When the Government Intervention Hurts More Than It Helps, so they have given one example. Before Competition Commission of India, there was an act in post-independence, that is MRTP Act, that is Monopolies and Restricted Trade Practices Act. Okay, so this act was there basically this act was there that in a very nutshell, that one industry cannot go beyond this bar. So it was prevention of domination. It was focused on the idea of prevention of domination, so that one industry should not dominate. there should be regulation, the opportunity should be given to the other companies, so that one company will not dominate, the other companies will rise up. However, it was a restrictive act, and that's what economic survey argues. Then when government intervenes like that, when government intervenes in the market forces like that, it leads to the restriction of the economy. Those industries will not go, economies of scale will not come, and then you will not get the optimum utilization of the resources. And that is why it was repealed after the LPG era, and finally it gives the way to the Competition Commission of India. So we have changed the focus from the prevention of the dominance of one company to regulating the abuse of the dominance. That goes to show that dominance is not a bad thing, but it should not lead to the unfair or unethical, illegal practices by the one who is dominating. For example, very good example is the predatory pricing. So Competition Commission of India is looking into the predatory pricing. So what is predatory pricing? It can be seen in the two contexts. First in the telecom context, and second in the e-commerce context. So in the telecom context, you must have seen that the Jio has come, it has put the data so low earlier. Then the predatory pricing started to happen. The other company started to has to get their data cost low, because otherwise they will not be able to match up, or the customer will switch. Similarly, in the e-commerce also, you must have seen the deep discounts given by the Amazons, Flipkarts, especially during the festival, so deep discounts. So that hampers the competition with the retail. Many of the protests are happening by the retail customer, that these Amazons and Flipkarts are hampering our business, they are destroying our industry, something like that. Okay. Next we're going to discuss, so that is Competition Commission of India. Next is a Delimitation Commission. So Delimitation Commission under Article 82 of the for the central for the Lok Sabha, and for Article 170 for the state level, the constitution says that there should be delimitations of the boundary. So what do you mean by delimitation? For example, the idea of our election is based upon the idea of one man is equal to one vote, equal to one value. So one man should be able to vote once, and not once, matlab one man's, the value of the one man's vote is one, and the value should also be one. So how to ensure that? So for example, UP is getting X number of seats, it has very high population. So as compared to that, for example, Lakshadweep, how much seats it should get, so that each person, whether he is living in UP or whether he is living in Lakshadweep or whether he is living in Gujarat, everyone should get a equal representation. Everyone should have the equal vote. Okay, and with respect to that, they have to delineate the boundaries, how many seats should be given, and something like that. For example, what should be the boundary of the Lok Sabha constituency, for example, Lucknow of or Trivandrum or Delhi, something like that. On within the Delhi, so many type, where to divide, how to divide, like that, right? Okay, so few of the things you need to remember with respect to the Delimitation Commission. Then when finally it gives out the order, it is beyond the judicial review. Okay, it is one of the very few things which are beyond the judicial review. Okay, so when it gives out the order, it cannot be questioned before any court. Okay, so modifications are not permitted in this report. Now the constitution has said that after each census there should be modification of the constituencies. However, we only have 4 delimitation commission till now. In 1952, after 1951 census, 1961 census, we have 1963. After 97 census, we have 1973. However, in 1976, what happened? That is there. First we'll discuss, then we will talk about the amendment. So Article 82, as I was talking about, and Article 170, it is not mentioned here. Article 170 in the state level says the same thing, that after every census, the parliamentary constituencies delimitation should be carried out, right? And it is done by the Delimitation Commission. Okay, so I was talking about that. So after in 1976, Indira Gandhi time, emergency time, basically, with the 42 so Constitutional Amendment Act, what they have done, they have freeze the delimitation up to 2001. They said before 2001, no changes will be done. Why it is so? Because the population thing. Many of the southern states have said that because in the southern state the population is stagnant or declining, and in the northern state the population is increasing. So because of that reason, the representation of those states in the Lok Sabha at the highest decision making body in India, law making body in India, there the representation of the southern states will be reduced. So they have said, okay, we will freeze it. Okay, so when 2001 came, they have again freeze it by to 2026. Okay, so they have not increased the number of the Lok Sabha seats by that. Okay, and the 84th constitutional amendment was done. So first 42nd constitutional amendment, then 84th constitutional amendment was done. What was the idea? As I told you, to promote the family planning and the population stabilization measure. Okay, then in 2002, it undertook the readjustment and rationalization of territorial constituency without the increasing the number of seats. So the process started in 2001, finally ended in 2008 finally, and after that the 2009 general election was held according to this delimitation commission. Okay, so this process took time. Obviously the delimitation of the constitution took time, and finally after that this is there. Okay, so this is the news first of all, and it is because delimitation commission will be in the news because of two reasons. First, because in 2026 is gonna be again the problem is gonna come. What's gonna happen in delimitation commission? The same problem that happened in the 15th finance commission, TOR, right? TOR, what? Terms of reference, that southern states should the criteria of the population for the distribution of resources among the center and the states, or among the states, the horizontal distribution. So southern states again argue that our population is reducing, so our contribution, we will get the less money. So in the TOR it was mentioned. So the same problem is going to happen, the same controversy, the north or the south controversy is going to come in 26 as well. Secondly, it was in the news because of the Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir reorganization happened, as we discussed. So because of that, what will be the delimitation of the Jammu and Kashmir? So there are a few things which we need to keep in mind. Okay. So with respect to Lok Sabha election in the Jammu and Kashmir, okay, so it is governed by the Lok Sabha seats in the Jammu and Kashmir is governed by the Indian Constitution. Okay, just one second. Here I'll explain. So the Lok Sabha election in the Jammu and Kashmir was decided by the Indian Constitution. Okay, and the assembly election decided by the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution and the respective representation of People's Act of Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, that is different from the other one, the central one. Okay, so with these two acts it was happening. Now it was happening with India Lok Sabha seat, but in 1976 the amendment which happened, which froze the process of the delimitation to 2001, that was not applicable to the Jammu and Kashmir. Getting my point? That means for the whole India, the process for the next election or the next delimitation which happened in 2001, in Jammu and Kashmir it was froze. Okay, so it is said that here the last delimitation commission was not interested with the task of the Jammu and Kashmir's delimitation. Getting my point? We are talking about the Lok Sabha currently. Hence, Jammu and Kashmir parliamentary seat remained delimited on the basis of 1971 census only. Okay, so it is currently based upon the 1971 census. Getting my point? So 1976 amendment, that is 42nd amendment, is not what was not applicable to the Jammu and Kashmir. First point. Second point is with respect to assembly election, what happened? With respect to assembly election, you see, with respect to assembly election, we have discussed the Lok Sabha election, right? With respect to assembly election, it was conducted through the Jammu and Kashmir and the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution and the Jammu and Kashmir Representation of People's Act, right? So they have, in practice, they were doing the same thing. They were making the delimitation for the states. However, unlike the rest of the country, the Jammu and Kashmir assembly seats were delimited on the base of 1981 census. Why? Because the process of delimitation, the freezing of the delimitation according to the 1971 census was not freezed for the assembly elections. Getting my point? Hence, because of the 1981 election, they are doing so. Getting my point? So currently there is a freeze in the Jammu and Kashmir election. Now finally the state is now turned into union territory. Now the center will extend its power, and the election commission is holding its internal meeting among themselves that what should be done. And before the next election comes out, they will do it. Okay, so that will remain in the news. Now we're going to discuss Controller General of Accounts. So Controller General of Accounts basically falls under, this is important, under Ministry of Finance, under the Department of the Expenditure, first of all. So don't get confused, because CAG is an independent body and you can get confused with respect to this as well. So this body is under the Department of the Expenditure, under Ministry of Finance. Where does it, the constitutional, first of all, it's not a constitutional body, obviously, because it is not mentioned in the constitution. Otherwise, we would have read it. However, it gets its mandate from the Article 150 of the Constitution. Okay, so what does it say? So Article 150 of the Constitution says that the accounts of the union and the state shall be kept in the form that the president prescribes, okay, on the advice of the CAG. So ultimately, the advisor, the principal advisor to the government with respect to the accounting, how the accounting will be done by the CGA, Controller General of Accounts. So what are the responsibilities? So it, first of all, it sees all the payments, receipts and accounting of the central ministry, how it is happening. Secondly, in what forms it is happening. Thirdly, the consolidation of the annual accounts of the central government, that will finally go to the CAG. Then I was talking about this one. Yes, I was talking about this. I was talking about the standards, the technical standards of the accounting. So technical standards of the accounting is decided by the CGA. Okay. They also manage the cadre management of the Group A and Group B officers of the Central Civil Accounts Office. And those who go into this office, they are promoted finally to get to this particular service. Okay. So this is Controller General of Accounts. If the question will come, the tough part of the question will not be its function, because you will able to get the functions. The tough part of the function will be, they will ask you where it is placed. So again, I'm repeating. So CGA is under the Department of Expenditure, under Ministry of Finance. Okay. So this is, you need to remember, right? So you can read it here also, what are the functions and all this. Principal advisor on the accounting matter, and the principal and submission of the accounts of the union government, exchange control and internal audits and all these things. Okay. Next is a Central Vigilance Commission. So Central Vigilance Commission, it's a statutory body. I think it is mentioned in your, obviously you must be reading in your Lakshmikant or whatever the sources you follow, your class notes or something. But still, like we discussed, and I'll tell the context why it was in the news as well. Because somehow or the news, all the constitutional statutory body always remain in news, right? So we don't have to find a context why we need to prepare this, because it is a part of our static syllabus. But quickly we'll do. So earlier, when it was established in 1964 on the basis of the Santhanam Committee on Prevention of Corruption, it was not a statutory body, it was an executive body. Finally, in 2003, it got the statutory status. Finally, a law came in and they got a statutory status. So the CVC is a multi-member body, and more importantly, it is been, the members are selected by a 3-member committee. Okay, so they recommend, the 3-member committee recommends a person, and finally the president appoints him or her. The 3-member committee, you need to know, first is Prime Minister, second is Home Minister, and third is the leader of opposition. Okay? One of the controversy erupted in few years back. For example, the bodies like CVC, bodies like NHRC, these bodies have a very good screening system, like the inclusion of the leader of opposition. So any partisan person will be partisan person, or the pro-government person, it's very less likely to get into the this particular service. As compared to, there is no such system for CAG, there is no such system for Election Commission, which are constitutional bodies, which have a greater role to play in the governance of the country. So it goes to show the gap or the vacuum in the screening system. Constitution expected the government of the day to provide such system, but the government or the successive governments, I should say, failed to do that. Okay. Now coming about the Central Vigilance Commission, so they hold the office for 4 years. Remember, 4 years, not 5 years, as compared to Election Commission or as compared to 6 years of the other bodies. Okay. So president can remove the CVC from the office under certain condition, and they have the security of tenure, obviously. So you have to read it from your own static sources. So it was in the news because CVC has set up a panel to examine the bank frauds above the 50 crore. So we have already discussed this actually last time. That is advisory board for the banking frauds. In the August month governance section, we have discussed that that above the banking frauds over more than 50 crores, bank frauds over 50 crores, we are the CVC has constituted a advisory board for the bank frauds, right? So that is that. Okay, moving to the next point, Waqf properties. So why we need to prepare them and why in the news? Because currently the government has decided to take the geotagging and the digitalization of all the Waqf properties. Now the question comes first, what is the Waqf property? We'll discuss that. So around the quantum of 1.2 lakh crore, the quantum is there, right? But we need to geotag them. We need to realize them where these bodies are, where these lands are, and we need to make the best use of the resources. Okay, right? So what are the Waqf property? So basically, a Waqf property, for example, I'm a Muslim, right? I'm a Muslim and I've given my property, my land to in the name of the God as a form of the charity. Okay, so when I've given my body to it and I do not reclaim it, there is no intention of reclaiming it. I do not want to reclaim it, right? Because I've given it as a charity, I've given it as a donation, right? So that is said to be a Waqf property. I don't know really how to correctly pronounce it, but Waqf property, let us call it. Okay, so it is governed by an act, Waqf Act 1995. It is being managed by a mutawali who acts as a supervisor. Okay, it is similar to a trust. Now trusts are also the same, remember. However, trusts are a broader purpose. Trust can be set up for anything, educational trust, but Waqf properties are more or less religious in centric. Okay, so that is there. Then the body which governs it, that is, okay, this act is Waqf Act 1950. This act is wrong. The year is currently it's wrong. I'll add it in the PPTs. So act is 1954. Okay, it's not a new act, relatively new act. It's an old act. Okay, so 1954 act is there. So Central Waqf Council is a statutory body under this particular act itself. You need to remember that it is under Ministry of Minority Affairs. I have covered the Ministry of Minority Affairs scheme in details, right? If you have seen the other video. So this particular body is a statutory body under the Ministry of Minority Affairs. The cabinet minister or the minister in charge of the Ministry of Minority Affairs is the ex officio chairperson of the Central Waqf Council. Getting a point? So the chairperson is the minister of the whoever be the minister of the head minister of the Ministry of Minority Affairs, he will be heading the Central Waqf Council. Okay, so this is that. It is the body that manages all these things. So it is empowered to advise on the central states and the state Waqf board. It can issue directives on the how if the body, so many lands are there, so what are their documentation, revenue records, audit reports, and all these things is the responsibility of this particular body. Right, so this is Central Waqf Council. Okay, right, 1954 it is. I was confused a bit. The few of the last topics. First is RIN, that is Register of the Indigenous Inhabitants of Nagaland. So for example, you know all NRC. I will cover all the, I'm just letting you know, in the next month current affairs, I'll be covering all the initiative with respect to the citizenship. Along with the citizenship chapter itself, I'm thinking to do it because many of the things with respect to citizenship are important. What is the difference between NRC, NPR, OCI, IPIO, everything I'll cover. Very detailed, very comprehensively I will cover it. Okay. So why in the news? This Register of Indigenous Inhabitants of Nagaland. So the Nagaland had decided to the variant of NRC. So basically it will be a list it will be a list on which all the name of the indigenous tribe people will be mentioned in that list. Okay, so it will have a master list where all the indigenous people would be written. So all the fake documents, those outsiders will not be in the list, and they can be taken out, or actions can be taken, or they can be devoid of the government facility or something like that. Okay, so it is the first official master list for the Nagaland's indigenous inhabitants. Okay, next is, so what are the tribes? So it has recognized, Nagaland has 16 recognized tribes. Okay, it has originally has 16 recognized tribes. Two of them are non-Naga tribes. So does not mean that Nagaland is inhabited only by the Nagas. There are also non-Naga types are also there. Right. So this is first thing you need to remember, RIA and what it is. Okay. The second is 16-point agreement. So we just heard that 16 tribes are there in the Nagaland. So 16 tribes have come together post-independence, because you must be knowing that Nagaland was having the secessionist tendency right in the start. They were not accepting the Indian constitution. They were not accepting to be the part of the Indian constitution, Indian Union. So they wanted their own separate Nagaland. But after in 1963, finally they were granted statehood and they become part of India. The process of it was completed through 16-point agreement. Those 16 tribes that have signed those agreement. Okay, it has led to the Special Constitutional Act, Article 371A, that we have already discussed. Article 371A. Okay, so this is 16-point agreement. So if the question is asked on 16-point agreement, remember 16-point agreement is with respect to the 16 tribes that have signed signed the agreement with the central government to become a statehood first of all, getting them autonomy and all these things, and leaving out their secessionist tendencies. Right. The next is the inner line permit. Very famous, you must be knowing, very famous topic. Majority of the students are knowing it. They must have read it. So many questions have been asked on it, not in UPSC but in test series. So it's a basically travel document that you have to carry if you are going to the places which have the inner line permit. So there will be some states. We will discuss Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, now Manipur as well, Mizoram. So these states will have if you want to go to the states, you have to carry it out. You have to carry a document, a temporary document, if you want to enter those places. It has a colonial origin. So Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation, it has restricted the entry of the British subject Indians into these particular areas, because the British interests were there in these areas. Now it has been done to protect the tribal culture. Okay? Problem of the illegal immigration, to tackle the problem of illegal immigration, it is there. Okay, so restriction continued in citizen of India. Why? As I told you, to protect tribal culture and regulate the movement to the international border. Right, so currently it's applicable in Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland and Nagaland. So, and apart from that, you can see from January 1st, 2020, the Manipur is also given the ILP. Because in Manipur, a lot of protests past so many years have been happening in Manipur, demanding that there should be ILP for the Manipur itself. Okay? So currently government, after this whole saga of NRC and so much protest, especially over the Citizenship Amendment Act finally. So the government has decided to give the ILP to the Manipuris. Right. So this is the areas where the ILP is there. So it is mentioned there how much application fee you have to pay for getting the ILPs. Right. So this is done. We have discussed the polity, very small sessions we are having the polity. Next time I'll have 2 sessions for polity. One session is specifically dedicated to all the concepts of the citizenship. Okay. And I'll see you in the next class. Thank you everyone.